The large viewing screen on the bridge of the Earth Alliance starship Intrepid showed the approaching alien vessel. It was massive, at least 3 times the size of the largest human ship ever built. Its hull gleamed with a metallic purple sheen that seemed to absorb the light of the nearby star. Captain Frank Miller stood with his hands clasped behind his back, trying to appear calm despite the rapid beating of his heart. This was humanity's first contact with an alien civilization, and the weight of that responsibility pressed down on him like a physical force. "They're hailing us, Captain," said Communications Officer Lisa Reed, her fingers dancing across her console. "On screen," Frank ordered, straightening his uniform jacket. The screen flickered, and the bridge crew collectively gasped. The alien commander was a tall reptilian being with scales that shifted between green and blue. 2 sets of yellow eyes blinked independently at them. Sharp teeth gleamed when the creature spoke. "I am High Commander Vrax of the Zorelian Empire," the alien said, its voice deep and resonant even through the translator. "Your species is unknown to us. Identify yourselves." Frank stepped forward. "I am Captain Frank Miller of the Earth Alliance starship Intrepid. We represent humanity and the unified governments of Earth. We come in peace and hope to establish friendly relations." High Commander Vrax tilted his massive head. "Earth, we have observed your transmissions. You are a young species, barely beyond your own solar system." "We are young in interstellar travel," Frank admitted, "but eager to learn and share knowledge with other civilizations." The conversation continued for nearly an hour. Frank and his diplomatic officer, Maria Johnson, explained Earth's history and culture. The Zorelians shared limited information about their empire, which they claimed spanned 7 alien species across hundreds of star systems. 3 days later, the true nature of the Zorelians became clear during the formal diplomatic meeting. As is customary for new species joining the galactic community, High Commander Vrax announced, "Earth will surrender its outer colonies as tribute to the Zorelian Empire. In exchange, we will provide protection and limited technology sharing." The human delegation stared in shock. "That's not a diplomatic arrangement," Maria said, standing up from her seat. "That's a demand for submission." Vrax's scales darkened. "It is the natural order. The strong protect the weak provide resources to the strong. This has been our way for 10,000 years. Frank stepped forward. "With respect, Commander Vrax, humans don't see things that way. We don't surrender our people or our territory. We propose instead a mutual defense treaty and fair trade agreements." The large alien rose to his full height, towering over the humans. "You misunderstand. This is not a negotiation. Your species will comply or face consequences." "We will defend our colonies," Frank said simply. "We hope it doesn't come to that." The meeting ended abruptly. As the human delegation prepared to return to their ship, Vrax approached Frank privately. "Your position is puzzling," the alien commander said. "Our scans show your technology is far behind ours. Your weapons and shields are primitive. Why risk destruction?" Frank looked up at the imposing figure. "Because those are our people out there. Our history is full of technologically superior forces underestimating those they thought weaker." Vrax made a sound that might have been laughter. "History favors the strong, human. You would be wise to accept reality." 3 months passed with tense communications between Earth and the Zorelian Empire. Earth prepared its defenses while trying to maintain diplomatic channels. The Zorelians made no concessions. Then, one quiet Tuesday, the warning came from the Jupiter outpost. Multiple ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. Massive energy signatures. This is not a drill. Admiral Susan Clark of the Earth Defense Fleet received the message in her command center on Mars. She had been expecting this day, preparing for it, but the reality still sent a chill down her spine. "How many?" she asked. 57, capital. "Ships, Admiral," her tactical officer replied, "plus smaller support vessels. They've positioned themselves in Jupiter orbit." Susan nodded grimly. The Earth fleet had only 23 capital ships total, and they were spread across the solar system. "Send the prepared message to Earth Command," she ordered. and begin Operation Porcupine. Within hours, Susan had gathered a small flotilla of 7 ships. They were the fastest in the fleet, recently retrofitted with experimental engines and the new quantum mine technology that had never been tested in actual combat. "The Sorelians have sent a message," her communications officer reported. "They demand immediate surrender of all colonies beyond Mars. They've given us 6 hours to comply." Susan smiled thinly. "That's more time than we need. All ships prepare for jump to Jupiter. We launch in 30 minutes. Her executive officer, Commander Greg Peters, looked concerned. "Admiral, even with our new modifications, we're outgunned, 10-1. The Zorelian weapons can cut through our shields like paper." "We're not going to beat them in a direct battle," Susan replied. "We're going to show them that humans don't play by their rules." The small human flotilla arrived at Jupiter, with 2 hours left on the Zorelian ultimatum. The massive alien ships hung in space like predators, their weapons ports glowing with energy. "They're hailing us," said the communications officer. The face of a Zorelian commander filled the screen. It wasn't Vrax, but another officer with darker scales. "Your response time is noted," the alien said. "Have you brought your surrender?" Susan stood tall. "This is Admiral Susan Clark of the Earth Defense Fleet. We do not surrender our people or our territory. We do, however, invite you to leave our solar system peacefully." The Zorelian commander's eyes blinked in what appeared to be surprise. "You cannot be serious. Our scanners show your ships are grossly outmatched. This is not bravery. This is foolishness." "Perhaps," Susan replied. "Or perhaps you don't understand humans yet." She cut the transmission and turned to her crew. "Begin the approach pattern. All ships deploy quantum mines in the specified coordinates. Keep your distance from their main weapon batteries." The human ships moved forward, appearing to mount a direct assault. The Zorelians, confident in their superior firepower, advanced to meet them. "They're taking the bait," Greg said, watching the tactical display. "They're following the exact pursuit pattern we predicted." "Humans may be technologically behind," Susan said, "but we've been fighting each other for thousands of years. We know a thing or two about strategy." The human ships weaved through Jupiter's rings, dropping their invisible cargo of quantum mines. The Zorelian ships pursued, their massive size making them less maneuverable but more powerful. "Mines deployed," the tactical officer reported. "Detonation in 3, 2, 1. The quiet of space was shattered by massive explosions that rippled through the Zorelian fleet. The quantum mines, hidden in the rings of Jupiter, detonated with forces that distorted space itself. 7 Zorelian capital ships were destroyed immediately. Many more spun out of control, their systems damaged. "Full retreat," Susan ordered. "Back to Mars' defense perimeter." As her ships pulled away, she received one final transmission from the Zorelian fleet. It was High Commander Vrax himself, his scales almost black with what humans would later learn was the Zorelian equivalent of rage. "This trickery dishonors you," he hissed. "You had no chance of victory, yet you refused the dignity of surrender and instead used deception." Susan allowed herself a small smile. "We call it strategy, Commander. And this was just the beginning." The first battle of the Human-Zorelian War had ended. The humans had lost no ships. The Zorelians had lost 7 capital vessels and had another 12 severely damaged. In his private quarters, High Commander Vrax sent a message to Zorelian High Command. "These humans do not fight like rational beings. They employ trickery where honor should prevail. They have no regard for their obvious disadvantage. This will not be the swift victory we anticipated." The war had begun, and humanity had served notice. Technological superiority wasn't everything. 6 months had passed since the first battle at Jupiter. The Zorelian Empire had learned to be more careful around human ships, but they still believed their victory was just a matter of time. Their vast empire had conquered hundreds of worlds, over thousands of years. One stubborn young species could not change that history. High Commander Vrax stood before the Strategic Council on the Zorelian command ship. His scales had dulled slightly, a sign of stress in his species. "The humans continue to resist despite our technological advantage," he reported. "They refuse all terms of surrender. War strategist Zorix, an elder Zorelian with pale green scales, spoke up. "We have never encountered a species that fights this way. They should recognize the logic of surrender to preserve their population." "They do not think like us," Vrax replied. "They value something they call freedom above survival." The council decided on a new approach. If the humans would not surrender their colonies peacefully, the Zorelians would take them by force. They would land troops on the human colony, World of New Eden, a farming planet with nearly 1 million human settlers. "Once they see we can take their worlds at will, they will understand resistance is pointless," Zorix declared. Commander Kraz was chosen to lead the ground invasion. His battle record was perfect, 15 planetary conquests without a single defeat. His massive dropships entered New Eden's atmosphere on a clear spring morning, carrying over 10,000 Zorelian troops. On the surface, Colonel Jack Bennett, of the Earth Colonial Defense Force, watched the ships descend. He had only 2,000 soldiers under his command. "They're landing in the western farmlands," his scout reported. "Standard Zorelian landing pattern, just like the briefings from Earth Command described." Jack nodded. "Then they'll behave exactly as expected. They always follow the same procedures." He turned to his officers. "Begin Operation Ghost Dance." The Zorelians established their base camp quickly and efficiently. Commander Kraz set up his command center and reviewed the human settlement patterns. "Their main city is here," he told, his officers pointing to a map. "Their defense force is small. We will crush them in a direct assault. Then the colonists will surrender." Lieutenant Grack, a younger officer, looked troubled. "Sir, should we be concerned about the tactics they used at Jupiter? They may have traps planned." Kraz dismissed the concern with a wave of his clawed hand. "Space combat is different. On the ground, our superior strength and armor give us an unbeatable advantage. No tricks can overcome such differences." That night, as the Zorelian forces prepared for the next day's assault, strange sounds began to echo across their camp. At first it was just a low humming, barely noticeable. Then it grew louder, pulsing in a rhythm that made the Zorelian soldiers uncomfortable. "What is that noise?" Kraz demanded. His communications officer shook his head. "Unknown, sir. It seems to be coming from all directions." The sound continued all night, preventing the troops from resting properly. Their sensitive hearing, an evolutionary advantage on their home world, became a weakness as the strange sounds disrupted their thought patterns. At dawn, Kraz ordered the advance despite his troops' fatigue. The Zorelian forces moved in perfect formation toward the human settlement. Their scouts reported no signs of human defensive positions. "They have retreated to their city," Kraz said with satisfaction. "They know they cannot win." The Zorelian force entered a large valley that provided the most direct route to the human city. Suddenly, the ground beneath them erupted, not with explosions but with a strange purple mist. The vegetation around them began to writhe and grow at impossible speeds. "Bioweapon," shouted Kraz's science officer. "The plants are reacting to some kind of growth accelerant." The native plants of New Eden, harmless under normal conditions, were now growing several feet per minute. Vines wrapped around Zorelian soldiers. Thorns that were normally tiny swelled to the size of daggers, penetrating the aliens' natural armor. "Fall back," Kraz ordered. "Find another route." As the Zorelians retreated from the valley, small teams of human soldiers led by Lieutenant Nancy Harris attacked from hidden positions. They wore special visors and fired weapons that produced blinding flashes of light. The Zorelians, with eyes adapted for the dim light of their home world, were momentarily blinded. By the time their vision cleared, the human strike teams had disappeared. "This is not honorable combat," Kraz roared. "They hide and strike like prey animals." Throughout the day, the pattern continued. Every time the Zorelians tried to advance, they faced not a direct confrontation, but a series of traps, ambushes, and environmental weapons. Lieutenant Paul Garcia led a team that deployed sonic disruptors tuned specifically to Zorelian hearing frequencies. The devices caused painful disorientation in the alien troops but had no effect on humans. Engineer Mary Wilson had studied Zorelian biology from data captured in previous encounters. She developed compounds that attracted the large stinging, insects native to New Eden's forests. The insects, harmless to humans, found Zarelian biochemistry irresistible. By nightfall, the Zarelian force had suffered nearly 1,000 casualties without ever engaging in direct combat with the main human defense force. Kraz called his officers together. "This is not warfare as we understand it. We must adapt our approach." "Sir," said his tactical officer, "we intercepted their communications. They're calling this guerrilla warfare. It's a strategy they've used against each other for centuries when facing a stronger opponent." Kraz's scales darkened with frustration. "Tomorrow we will change tactics. We will use our long-range weapons to destroy their city from a distance. That will force them to face us directly." But the next morning, the human city appeared abandoned. Kraz ordered a careful advance, suspecting a trap. His caution was warranted. The buildings were rigged with simple but effective explosive devices that could be triggered remotely. As the Zarelians picked their way through the booby-trapped city, they finally encountered a group of wounded human soldiers. One was missing an arm. Another had severe burns across his face. They appeared helpless. "Capture them for questioning," Kraz ordered. When the Zarelian troops approached, the wounded humans triggered hidden weapons, killing 15 aliens before being subdued. "Why?" Kraz asked the surviving human prisoner. "You were already defeated. Why continue fighting?" The wounded soldier, despite his pain, smiled up at the towering alien. "Because every minute you spend fighting us is a minute we're not losing." Kraz couldn't understand. "But you are losing. We outnumber you. We have better weapons. Your city is destroyed." "You destroyed empty buildings," the human replied. "Our people are safe in the caves to the north, and while you've been chasing us around, Colonel Bennett has been attacking your landing ships." Kraz received the alarming report moments later. Half of their transport ships had been disabled by human attacks. Without those ships, they couldn't bring in reinforcements or evacuate if necessary. That night, Kraz sent an urgent message to High Command. "The humans adjust to our tactics faster than we can develop them. They exploit weaknesses we didn't know we had. Most disturbingly, they seem to fight harder when victory appears impossible. Request immediate reinforcement or permission to withdraw." The reply came swiftly. "No reinforcements available. Hold position. Victory is expected regardless of primitive human tactics." Kraz looked out at the burning buildings of the human city, listening to the strange sounds that again filled the night air. He had never faced defeat before, but for the first time, he began to wonder if the mighty Zarelian Empire had finally met an enemy they couldn't understand, and therefore couldn't defeat. 1 year into the war, the Zarelian Empire faced something they had never experienced before, a war of attrition against a technologically inferior enemy. Their vast military resources were being drained not by decisive battles but by countless, small engagements where the humans refused to follow conventional warfare tactics. On the Zarelian homeworld, Emperor Zox summoned his war council. The grand chamber with its high ceiling and ancient battle trophies had never before hosted discussions of a war that wasn't going according to plan. "This situation is unacceptable," the Emperor said, his scales shimmering with barely controlled anger. "How can a species with inferior technology continue to resist?" High Commander Varax bowed his head. "The humans do not fight according to any logical pattern we understand. When we adapt to one tactic, they create new ones. They seem to thrive on improvisation." The Galactic Council, made up of representatives from other advanced alien civilizations, had begun to take notice. Some members who had long chafed under Zarelian dominance watched with interest as the humans not only defended their territory, but started taking back conquered colonies. War Master Dex, one of the most decorated military leaders in Zarelian history, stepped forward. "I request permission to lead our forces at Proxima Centauri. The mining facilities there are vital to human industry. If we take them, the humans will have no choice but to negotiate." Emperor Zox granted the request. War Master Dex was given command of the largest single fleet assembled since the beginning of the war, 30 capital ships and over 50 support vessels. On Earth, General Linda Johnson reviewed the reports from their intelligence network. The Zarelians were coming for Proxima Centauri in force. They're finally getting desperate, she told her staff. This gives us our chance to implement Operation Hornet's Nest. Her second-in-command looked concerned. General, if we lose the Proxima mining facilities, our production of warship components will drop by 30%. Linda nodded. Sometimes you have to sacrifice a piece to win the game. Begin the evacuation immediately, but make it look disorganized. I want the Zarelians to think we're running scared. Over the next week, human forces appeared to withdraw from Proxima Centauri in a hurry. They left behind minimal defenses and equipment that appeared abandoned in haste. When the Zarelian fleet arrived, War Master Dex was pleased to see the human forces in retreat. His scouts reported that the valuable mining facilities were largely undefended. At last they show wisdom, he told his officers. They recognize the futility of defending this position against our superior force. The Zarelian invasion force landed in full strength. War Master Dex established his command center in the main mining complex. He was surprised by how intact everything was. They left so much valuable equipment, his science officer noted. It is unlike them. Dex dismissed the concern. Perhaps they are finally learning that resistance only increases their losses. What the Zarelians didn't know was that for the past 3 months, Major Steve Thompson and a team of engineers had been modifying the deep mining equipment. The massive drills and excavators that normally harvested rare minerals from beneath Proxima Centauri's surface had been repurposed. Hidden in a secure bunker 5 miles from the main facility, Steve gave the order. Begin Operation Hornet's Nest. Deep below the surface, the modified mining equipment activated. Instead of digging for minerals, they began a carefully planned sequence of excavations designed to destabilize the crust beneath the Zarelian positions. The first tremors were mild. War Master Dex ordered his science teams to investigate but wasn't concerned. Seismic activity was common around mining operations. Then the shaking intensified. Fissures opened in the ground, swallowing Zarelian troops and equipment. The carefully planted explosive charges in the deepest mines detonated in sequence, causing cascading collapses throughout the underground network. We're under attack, Dex roared. Return to the ships. But as the Zarelian forces scrambled to evacuate, they faced a new threat from above. Captain Betty Martinez led a fleet of small, nimble ships that had been hiding on the far side of the planet. These ships weren't designed for direct combat with the massive Zarelian vessels. Instead, they targeted the command and communication systems with surgical precision. Focus on their flagship, Betty ordered her pilots. Disable their engines, and communications first. The human ships darted between the larger Zarelian vessels, too small and fast to be effectively targeted by the aliens' heavy weapons. They fired specialized electromagnetic pulse weapons designed specifically to disrupt Zarelian technology. War Master Dex felt his ship shudder as its engines failed. Restore power, he commanded. Launch fighters to deal with these pests. But the careful planning of Operation Hornet's Nest had accounted for this. The seismic activity had been precisely calculated to reach the Zarelian landing zones just as they would be attempting to evacuate. Ground fissures and sinkholes swallowed launch pads and support equipment. As his ship listed to one side, Dex received dire reports from the surface. Half his ground forces were trapped by the collapsing terrain. His fleet was in disarray, with ships unable to coordinate due to the targeted disruption of their communications. All vessels, retreat to Rally Point Alpha, he ordered. We will regroup and return with reinforcements. Before his flagship could escape, 3 human vessels surrounded it. Their weapons were focused on the bridge. War Master, his tactical officer reported, they are targeting our command center specifically. One direct hit will breach our shields. For the first time in his long career, War Master Dex faced a choice between surrender and certain death. In all Zarelian military history, no War Master had ever been captured alive. Open a channel, he finally said. The face of Captain Betty Martinez appeared on his screen. This is Captain Martinez of the Earth Alliance. Do you wish to surrender, War Master? Dex's scales darkened with shame. You knew we were coming. This was a trap. Betty nodded. We've been studying how you think. You value strategic targets according to their material worth. We figured you wouldn't be able to resist going after our mining facilities with full force. What are your terms? Dex asked. Unconditional surrender of you and your forces. In return, we will treat all prisoners according to Earth's laws of war. Medical care for the injured, humane treatment for all. War Master Dex surrendered. It was the first time in recorded history that a Zarelian War Master had been captured alive. The psychological impact rippled through the Empire. If War Master Dex, with the largest fleet assembled in the war, could be defeated through human trickery, was anyone safe? Other alien species in the Zarelian Empire began to question the leadership. Reports of human victories despite inferior technology spread. The Zarelian propaganda machine couldn't explain why humans refused to follow conventional military logic. In a secure transmission to Emperor Zox, High Commander Vrax wrote, "These humans possess a quality we cannot quantify. They call it determination or sometimes spite. They fight hardest when cornered. They sacrifice valuable resources not for logical gains but to create psychological impacts. We cannot predict their strategies because they do not value what we value." War Master Dex expected torture or execution. Instead, he was shocked to be treated with respect and proper medical care. The humans even allowed him to maintain his rank among the other Zarelian prisoners. When he asked a human guard why they showed such restraint toward an enemy, the guard simply replied, "Because that's what makes us different from conquerors. We fight to protect, not to dominate." For the Zarelian Empire, this was the beginning of the end. Not just of the war, but of their understanding of warfare itself. 2 years after first contact, the unthinkable happened. The mighty Zarelian Empire, which had conquered hundreds of worlds over thousands of years, sent a formal request for peace talks. News of the request spread quickly through human space. People gathered in public places to watch the announcement from Earth Alliance headquarters. "Today marks a historic moment," the Earth Alliance president said on screens across human territory. "The Zarelian Empire has proposed a peace treaty that recognizes all human territories and establishes a buffer zone between our species." On the Zarelian homeworld, the news was met with shock and disbelief. For the first time in their recorded history, the Empire had failed to conquer a species it had set its sights on. Emperor Zox faced growing unrest. Many questioned how a technologically superior civilization could be forced to make peace with humans. To address these concerns, the Emperor took an unprecedented step. He would personally attend the peace signing. The ceremony took place on a neutral space station constructed specifically for the occasion. Admiral Susan Clark, now promoted to lead the entire Earth Defense Fleet, represented humanity alongside diplomatic teams from Earth and the colonies. Emperor Zox arrived with an impressive delegation, including High Commander Vrax. The Emperor was even larger than other Zarelians, with scales that shifted between deep purple and gold. As the formal terms were read and agreed upon, Emperor Zox requested a private moment with Admiral Clark. In a small conference room away from the cameras and other officials, the Emperor asked the question that had puzzled him throughout the conflict. Why did humans fight so hard when surrender would have preserved more lives, he asked. Our terms of subjugation were not harsh compared to other species we have conquered. Susan looked directly at the towering alien ruler. Because we would rather die on our feet than live on our knees. The translator struggled with the concept, producing a series of clicks and hisses that made the Emperor tilt his massive head. Your translator cannot fully convey our meaning, Susan explained. Throughout human history, we have valued freedom above mere survival. When faced with domination, humans will often choose a difficult fight over an easy surrender. Emperor Zox considered this a most inefficient approach to species preservation. Perhaps, Susan replied, but it has kept us from being conquered by each other for thousands of years, and now, it has kept us from being conquered by you. After the peace treaty was signed, the aftermath transformed galactic politics. The Zarelian Empire's aura of invincibility was shattered. Other subjugated species began resistance movements, inspired by human tactics. Most significantly, a new protocol emerged in alien military doctrine, informally called the human contingency. When evidence of human involvement in a conflict was detected, military commanders were authorized to withdraw forces rather than engage directly. 5 years after the peace treaty, the Earth Alliance opened its first embassy on the Zarelian homeworld. The ambassador, a former colonel named Alan Foster, was given an unusual tour by his Zarelian guide. "This is our war academy," the guide explained as they entered a massive building with stone columns. "All our military leaders train here." Alan was surprised to see images of human battles displayed prominently in the entrance hall. "You study our warfare techniques?" "Indeed," the guide replied. "All cadets now study the human Zarelian War as a required course. Your species has changed our understanding of conflict." Inside a large classroom, Alan watched young Zarelian officers studying footage from the Battle of Proxima Centauri. The instructor, a veteran of that very battle, pointed to the screen. "Note how the humans sacrificed valuable mining equipment, not for tactical advantage but to create circumstances that would lead to our psychological defeat," the instructor said. "This is the key difference in human warfare. They target the mind as much as the body." 10 years after the peace treaty, when the aggressive Draxian horde expanded into the sector, they specifically avoided human space despite its strategic value. Their ships took longer routes that added months to their journey times rather than cross human-controlled areas. When questioned by their allies about this decision, the Draxian Supreme Commander released a simple statement. "The resources are not worth the cost. Humans do not fight to win. They fight to make you lose. We would prevail, but the victory would cripple us for a generation." Meanwhile, humanity continued to advance technologically. With peace established, they focused on development rather than warfare. Within 15 years, human ships and weapons had caught up to galactic standards. Some innovations, born from the creative problem-solving that had won the war, even surpassed alien technology in specific areas. Alien anthropologists became fascinated with human history, particularly humanity's long record of wars against itself. They concluded that humans had developed their terrifying tenacity because their greatest enemies had always been other humans. To fight humans is to fight an enemy forged by millions of years of evolution and thousands of years of conflict against themselves, wrote one Zarelian scholar in a widely read text called The Human Factor in Galactic Warfare. They do not know how to surrender because, until meeting us, surrender often meant extinction. While other species developed technology to avoid conflict, humans developed ways to win conflicts despite technological disadvantages. 20 years after the war, a young Zarelian officer accidentally violated human space during a training exercise. His commander immediately ordered retreat, but it was too late. 3 human ships appeared and surrounded the Zarelian vessel. The young officer, panicking, wanted to fire weapons. His commander stopped him with a phrase that had become common throughout galactic military circles. "Don't pull a Vrax." It meant, don't underestimate a seemingly weaker opponent. Don't assume technological superiority guarantees victory. And most importantly, don't provoke humans unless you're prepared to face an enemy that doesn't know how to quit. The incident was resolved peacefully. The humans escorted the Zarelian ship back to the border with no penalties imposed, but it reinforced the lesson that had spread throughout the galaxy. 50 years after the war, when human representatives joined the Galactic Council, their reputation preceded them. Though they were among the youngest species at the table, they were treated with careful respect. During one heated council debate about resource rights in a disputed sector, a delegate from a physically imposing species made veiled threats against a smaller coalition. The human representative simply stood up and walked to stand beside the threatened delegates. He said nothing. He made no threats. But the message was clear. The threatening delegate quickly changed his approach, offering compromise instead of intimidation. Later, when asked why the presence of a human changed his mind, the delegate gave a response that summed up why every alien commander now shunned humans in war. Only fools fight humans. You might win the battle, but they will make sure you lose something more important in the process: your dignity, your confidence, your will to continue. Fighting humans is like fighting an idea, and ideas are bulletproof. 100 years after the Human-Zarelian War, the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Humanity had spread to over 50 star systems, becoming a respected member of the Galactic Council. The peace with the Zarelian Empire had held firm, eventually growing into a cautious alliance. Captain Laura Nelson stood on the bridge of the Earth Alliance flagship Guardian, watching as her ship approached the massive space station that served as the headquarters for the Galactic Defense Coalition. At 42, Laura was one of the youngest captains in the fleet, known for her innovative thinking and diplomatic skills. "First time at Coalition headquarters?" asked her first officer, Commander Jeff Bowman. Laura nodded. "I've seen images, but nothing compares to seeing it in person." The space station was a marvel of engineering, built through the combined efforts of 12 different species. It housed the Joint Military Command that coordinated defense across peaceful civilizations in the Orion Arm. "We're receiving docking instructions," said the communications officer. "They're welcoming us with full honors." Laura straightened her uniform. "This emergency summit must be serious if they've called ships from every coalition member." 20 minutes later, Laura sat in a large circular chamber with captains and commanders from across the galaxy. Some were humanoid, others completely alien in form. The Zarelian representative, war strategist Xilax, nodded respectfully to her. From across the room, Admiral Pedro Ortiz, the human representative to the Coalition Council, called the meeting to order. "Thank you all for responding so quickly to our call," he said. 3 days ago, our long-range sensors detected a new threat entering the galaxy. We've identified them as the Krell Dominion. Images appeared on the large screen showing ships unlike any Laura had seen before. They were massive, shaped like arrowheads with hulls that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. "The Krell are from a neighboring galaxy," Admiral Ortiz continued. "According to our intelligence, they have conquered their entire home galaxy and now seek new territories. Their technology is advanced beyond anything we currently possess." War strategist Xilax stood up. "The Zarelian Empire has encountered mentions of the Krell in ancient texts. They are described as relentless conquerors who see other life forms as resources to be harvested rather than civilizations to be subjugated." A murmur of concern spread through the chamber. "How long do we have before they reach populated systems?" asked a captain from the Viridian Alliance. 2 months at their current speed," replied Admiral Ortiz. "They've already destroyed 3 of our outer monitoring stations without attempting communication." Laura studied the images of the Krell ships. "What's our strategy?" "That's why you're all here," said Admiral Ortiz. "We need to form a joint fleet to intercept them before they reach populated space. Captain Nelson, given your background in unconventional tactics, you'll work with war strategist Xilax to develop our approach." After the meeting, Laura and Xilax moved to a smaller strategy room. The Zarelian was much younger than those she had seen in historical records but still towered over her. "It is an honor to work with you, Captain," Xilax said. "I studied your tactical innovations at our war academy." Laura smiled. "And I studied your people's battles with the Centauri cluster. I believe we can learn from each other." They spent hours reviewing the limited data on the Krell ships. The technology was indeed advanced. Energy shields stronger than anything in the Coalition, weapons that could tear through conventional armor, and engines that allowed for precise, faster-than-light jumps. A direct confrontation would result in heavy losses, Xilax concluded. "Even with our combined fleets," Laura nodded, deep in thought. "So we don't confront them directly. We need to understand them first." Over the next week, representatives from all Coalition species worked together to prepare. The Viridians contributed their advanced sensor technology. The Zarelians provided their strongest battleships. The humans brought their unpredictability and adaptive strategies. Laura was given command of a special task force consisting of smaller, faster ships from various species. Their mission was to gather intelligence on the Krell, while the main Coalition fleet prepared for potential engagement. "We need to understand how they think," Laura told her mixed-species crew as they prepared to depart. "Every species has patterns, vulnerabilities, and values. We need to find the Krells." Her task force departed using stealth technology to approach the advancing Krell fleet. For 3 weeks, they observed from a distance, collecting data on Krell movements, communications, and behavior. Laura noticed something interesting about the Krell ships. They move in perfect formation, never deviating by even a few meters. That level of precision suggests either completely automated systems or a hive mind structure. Their energy usage spikes in regular intervals, added a Viridian science officer. Almost like a heartbeat. A pattern began to emerge. The Krell ships seemed to function as a single organism rather than individual vessels. They shared energy, repaired each other, and coordinated with an efficiency that suggested a centralized control system. Laura sent their findings back to Coalition headquarters. Based on this intelligence, a new strategy was formed. If the Krell functioned as one entity, then they might share the same vulnerabilities. When the Krell fleet reached the outer edge of Coalition space, they encountered what appeared to be an easy target, a small group of damaged ships limping away from a mining outpost. The Krell deployed a small portion of their fleet to eliminate these ships, just as Laura had predicted they would. The damaged ships were actually highly maneuverable vessels in disguise, equipped with devices developed specifically to disrupt the communication frequency the Krell used to coordinate their hive mind. When the devices activated, the pursuing Krell ships suddenly lost formation, drifting aimlessly as their centralized control was temporarily broken. This confirmed Laura's theory. The Krell weren't individual ships working together. They were extensions of a single controlling intelligence. Armed with this knowledge, the Coalition developed a bold plan. Rather than trying to destroy the technologically superior Krell ships, they would target the communication system that linked them together. 1 month later, when the Krell fleet approached the main Coalition defensive line, they faced not a traditional battle formation, but a scattered array of smaller ships. These ships carried powerful signal disruptors designed to break the Krell-Hive connection. The battle was chaotic. Many Coalition ships were lost, but the strategy worked. Cut off from their central control, individual Krell ships became vulnerable, unable to coordinate their advanced weapons and shields. The Coalition victory was costly but complete. The remaining Krell ships retreated from the galaxy, their hive mind apparently deciding that this territory wasn't worth the unexpected resistance. At the victory celebration, war strategist Zilax approached Laura. "You know what made this victory possible, don't you?" Laura raised an eyebrow. "The cooperation of all our species?" "That too," Zilax agreed. "But more specifically, it was the human approach to the problem. You didn't try to outgun a technologically superior enemy. You looked for the unexpected weakness." Laura smiled. "We learned that lesson from your people, actually. Sometimes the strongest opponent has the most surprising vulnerability." As Laura looked around at the diverse gathering of species celebrating, together she realized that the legacy of the Human-Zarelian War wasn't just that aliens learned to fear humans in battle. The greater legacy was that former enemies had learned to respect each other's strengths and work together against common threats. The legend of why alien commanders shunned humans in war had evolved into something more important, a lesson in why cooperation and understanding different perspectives could overcome seemingly impossible odds.